Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Gaming, and another video by request. This video comes from Link, who you may well have seen commenting on several recent videos with enthusiasm about the upcoming Monster Kingdoms RPG. I would hazard a guess that Link may be the most enthusiastic person online when it comes to the Monster Kingdoms RPG. And I mean this in all sincerity. Thank you so much, Link, for your hype, for your enthusiasm. It is really appreciated. I love it when I see people getting into games I've worked on. It means it's all been worth it. And certainly more than the money I get paid for it. Now, Link asked for a video on the subject of Bleed, because Link backed the campaign for a deluxe version of the game, and as you know, if you do that, you can contact me through MatthewDawkins.com and request a video. Link did that very thing, and made a request that reads as follows. Once upon a time, I didn't know much about character bleed or how to manage it. I ended up having an absolutely awful bleed and had to take a hiatus from the TTRPG space. I'm back now, obviously, and happy to be so. Still, I like collecting tips and tricks whenever I can. I'm curious how you personally manage bleed at the table, given how much experience you have running various types of games, especially the somewhat edgy to outright horrific games. It is a good question, Link, and it's not one I've ever really covered on this channel, in large part because bleed has never affected me. And what do I mean by that? Well, I've obviously seen bleed happen. I've witnessed it in plenty of occasions, and I have had to help people with their bleed through roleplay. Or at times I haven't known what to do about it because the concept seemed so strange to me. You see, from, I guess, my psychological makeup, and this isn't trying to appear to be better or worse than anything else, I'm very capable of compartmentalizing my life from the stories I tell, the characters I play, the material I write. I can do it all with a certain amount of divorce so that it doesn't leave me affected. Now, that's not to say it doesn't occasionally affect my mood, in the sense of if I write a lot of horror month after month after month, I want to come up for air and I'll work on something they came from, or I'll work on The World Below, or if that's uplifting in comparison to, I don't know, Cult Divinity Lost. But it's never left me feeling, I guess, like the material that I've written or the character I have played has seeped through to me and is affecting me in any kind of way that I guess I might describe as demonstrable. But that doesn't mean I don't understand it. For a while I didn't, and I think I had the very immature view that if you can't deal with bleed, you shouldn't be role-playing. Or if you can't deal with bleed, you're not mature enough to play a game. It's only a game. What's wrong with you? I've certainly had those thoughts go through my head when I was younger, when I lacked empathy. And I would like to think that I've got a bit better with that now. I would suggest the worst bleed I have witnessed, as in the most affecting bleed that I have witnessed, has come through LARPs. And while I've not participated in many LARPs, I have seen players come out of LARPs, especially LARPs that are designed to emulate feelings of trauma or torture or just hostile situations. Players after that have come away really shaken or upset or just confused. The main example that comes to mind is a LARP called The Prison, which I know is now fairly famous or infamous, depending on your experience with it, and I participated in this LARP, every player is put in a room that has surveillance in it. You're all in one room, and the players are divided typically between 3 or 4 groups. Each one of you is a criminal, and each one of you has on a piece of paper what your crime was. The groups are divided in severity of your crime. Now, it's the severity of the crime as determined by the person running the game, telling the story, who is, for the most part, outside of the room, surveilling it, watching you, listening to you, and so on. So in this dystopian world that's present in the game, you may have a different qualification or value system to what we have here. So, for example, one of the worst criminals in the game, at least deemed worst criminals, is someone who is playing a young woman, in theory, who killed her parents after being abused and is clearly mentally troubled. And that person is in with the sort of genuine murderers and rapists and arsonists and so forth, while there's others among us, the people who are responsible for, let's say, petty crimes, vandalism, and so on, who are in a different group, but certainly see that character who took revenge as more sympathetic than the serial killer that she's in the group with. Now, the players in this game don't have to announce what their crimes were. They know them. When I was playing, my character was imprisoned for illegally harvesting organs from patients. I was a backstreet chop shop doctor, but I still decided I'd play the doctor. I still wanted to play that character, but the way I played it was, I'm here because I was offering people backstreet abortions and operations even when they didn't have the insurance to pay for it. And in this dystopian system that we live in, if you don't have the money, you don't get the healthcare. So I was doing these people a favor, and then the bureaucracy ended up locking me up. And for the most part, people believed that. Now, where does the game element of the prison come in? And this is all relevant. This is all pertinent to the story of Bleed. Well, every few minutes or so, the warden enters, that's the GM, and asks the rest of the players to nominate 2 characters, I believe it was, The warden chooses 2 characters, and then it's up to the players to choose which one of them is going to be taken off for summary execution due to overcrowding in the prison. At which point divisions start emerging in the group, and you want to get to know the other player characters because their relationships with you are going to affect your ultimate treatment of them. In theory, when someone gets taken for execution, that's them out of the game. In actual fact, they become the surveillance, and they will choose the next 2 players. And the idea, I believe, is that they have a better idea of which characters will cause the most drama to put them together. So what happens if you put 2 sympathetic characters together? What if you put 2 really malicious characters together? What if you put 2 characters together completely at random? What if one of the same characters keeps getting put up for the poll over and over and over again? But the players inside the room, especially the first time you play the prison, don't know that it's the prisoner who's just been ejected who's choosing the next round of nominations. Anyway, during this game, at one point, because you have the freedom to do this, one of the players was playing like a street fighter, a street tough, who had killed some police, and the warden came in, and the player rushed the warden, tackled him to the ground, obviously announced, I'm tackling you to the ground. They had a faux grappling fight. The warden reached his belt, said, mace, and didn't have any mace, but this is the wonder of LARP, pretended to spray the character. The street fighter pretended he'd been sprayed and was dragged off. And in all of that, none of the other characters intervened. It was a really interesting moment of psychological observation, human nature, I guess. All of us, when this fight was going on, we could have taken advantage of the open door. We could have helped the street fighter overpower the guard. We could have helped the guard to win brownie points, maybe. But instead, every single character backed up. None of us wanted the risk of getting in trouble, getting caught, getting punished. And so this happened. The street fighter was dragged off and executed, and the nomination still went ahead. And from that point, the tension in the room became insanely high. And during the game, my adrenaline was going. My heart was racing. I was forgetting to blink. One of the players through the character said, "Why does he never blink?" Because they were starting to get scared of me. And it's because in the game, I was really getting into it. But as soon as the game ended, that's it. Done. I can breathe again. Other players didn't have that experience. The time I played the prison, there wasn't a cooldown afterwards. There wasn't a big circle of players talking to each other about how are your feelings? Do you want to talk about anything that happened in the game? And the reason was because once a player had done their surveillance duty and the new prisoner came out to take over, they just went back to the bar, to the chalet, to wherever, which meant if you got evicted early, you probably weren't going to suffer from some kind of after effect. But if you'd been in that game for close to 2 hours and then you get betrayed by someone who you think cares for you, and then when the game ends, congratulations, you're a survivor if you last that long. But if you've lasted that long and then you get betrayed, it can leave you with feelings. And for the weekend, this was a LARP convention, lots of small parlor LARPs taking place across a site. I would run into the other players, and some of them, the ones who had really invested in this game and the ones who came away from it with deep feelings, were still feeling those feelings of betrayal or hurt or paranoia. It was very interesting to observe, but also quite worrying because there was no safety net. There should have been. There should have been a mandatory get-together. And so you had people upset, people whose weekends, I don't know if they got ruined, because I think some people, to put it crudely, get off on the surge of emotion that can bleed through a game. But others did really dislike this feeling that they were left with. And there was nothing put in place. So I understand this. I understand bleed. Obviously, I've seen it come up. It happened at the Convention of Thorns LARP that I went to as well. There's a reason I don't attend LARPs anymore, and it's because for all the safety guidelines that are put in place, I do find, for various reasons, LARPs tend to be more likely to leave lasting effects, negative effects on players than positive ones. And that's anecdotal. I'm not coming at this with any evidence. It's just my experience of it. I don't like to observe it. And I also don't want to feel like I've got to be the person who steps in to help. I like to help people, but I don't want to have that responsibility alone, you know? So, I mean, I could organise these things, but it's ultimately up to the LARP organiser to do it, not me. And as for TTRPGs, I've seen it less often, but I have definitely seen it. And most of the time it does revolve around character death, or usually a GM taking advantage of a player's character and putting them through a scenario they don't particularly like, and they feel like they're being roller coasted along, and then by the end of it they've had this surge of emotion, often betrayal, and it leaves them shaken. You can have positive bleed, I suppose, where your character accomplishes something fantastic, and even after the game you're feeling buoyant and energetic because your character did something great and you've got to experience it. But I think the tricks that I have seen, the tips that I have seen for getting through bleed most of all, is ultimately discussion. I mean, in a way, it's a group therapy. If it's a LARP, we're talking about getting in a circle, talking about your feelings. And if you don't have any feelings, that's fine. It's just, it doesn't cost you anything to listen to people for a little while and offer your opinion if they ask for it. Because I've attended LARPs where it happens as well. At the end of the session, everyone sits there. And for me, I feel like I don't need this, but I appreciate other people do. And if I can help them out with that, then great. So while I was LARPing, that's just part of the ritual. For TTRPGs, again, it's all about communication. In almost everything, relationship-wise, emotion-wise, communication is the ultimate curative. If you can't speak to the person running the game, if you can't speak to your fellow players, if they won't speak to you, I get it. Some people just turn up to a game to play and then they head home. But if you are feeling, let's say, traumatized, sad, angry, happy, whatever, and you need to speak to someone about it in the group, there should be the allowance for that communication. It should be encouraged because it creates a healthier group, ultimately, not only for the players, but it makes you, well, like each other a little more. And I think the best kind of role-playing groups are the ones that develop into friendship groups in a way. Role-playing can just be about turning up, rolling dice, playing a character and fucking off, but it can also be a lot better than that. In terms of personally dealing or preventing bleed, again, speaking for myself, I wonder whether the reason I don't suffer from it, and if this acts as advice to you, Link, or anyone else, maybe it does, and if so, I hope it helps, is the fact that I genuinely look forward to my characters, if I'm playing, look forward to my characters' troubles. What does that mean? Well, I build in my head an arc. Not that I want my character to succeed, but I expect my character to fail multiple times. I want my character to fail multiple times because it leads to a more interesting narrative. And this is partly why I GM more than I play. I look at characters and I think that character needs to fall and fall and fall before they can rise. And so by building that anticipation in, I am prepared for the bad stuff that will happen, and the fact that the rise may never occur, that enough bad things may happen that they will ultimately fail, go mad, die, depending on the game. And because I have prepared for that possibility, it doesn't bleed through to me. It doesn't mean I can't roleplay, it doesn't mean I can't play the character, and hell, it doesn't mean I can't feel frustrated about a GM decision or something another player said, but I don't end up feeling like a character's failures, for example, are my own. It just doesn't translate because I have that anticipation. And I think making allowances in advance in your head for this is what could happen is a decent way of preventing bleed if it's something you don't want. I think it's also worth, in advance, talking to your GM and saying, how immersive do we want this game to be? And the GM's probably not going to come back with some kind of categorical answer, a percentage or something like that. But the GM may well say, well, I'd like for you to really react when a horrific thing happens. I want your character to act as they should. I don't want them to be all jaded and cynical, not yet anyway. A GM may say, when your character loses someone, and they will probably lose someone in this session, I want you to not feel afraid to have a character who bursts into tears or breaks down, and so on. Now, just by having that back and forth, GM to the player, it means that when it happens, and it doesn't have to be a surprise, and it doesn't have to be a spoiler, it's just saying, if it happens, when it happens, be ready for it. Because there's a big difference between that and having it suddenly dumped on you that everyone you've ever loved has died and you're the only one left. That everything you've ever built has been for nothing and it's all collapsed down. It's all a failure now and you've got to live with the consequences. It's very different from, it turns out the person you betrayed was the one person who was on your side. That kind of thing. With a little bit of forewarning, much like preparing these things yourself, when it happens, you can still act. You can still act that you're upset or angry or whatever your feeling is supposed to be, but you're not necessarily feeling it. It's all about preparedness. You don't want to throw yourself into situations that you may respond poorly to that might stick with you. Now, I'm going to caveat all of that because I mentioned people getting off on bleed, and I think it is a big part of roleplay that's very rarely addressed. I believe there was a recent World of Darkness game that may have even advocated this, and I think you should advocate it with reservation. Players may well want the bleed. They may well want to roleplay because they want to feel certain things. And I don't think you can stigmatize that. I don't think you can outlaw that entirely. I've mentioned before how I don't like it when people play LARPs so that they can titillate themselves, so that they can basically, I guess, turn themselves on through sort of an ersatz sex scene or domination or something like that. That kind of thing is the big, you know what, I'm out of this because I don't want to feel like everyone's masturbating around me when I'm role-playing. But I don't think you can stigmatize the idea that some people, and I don't think you should, that some people really want those heavy emotions. Some people want to feel tears or happiness or whatever the emotion is they're seeking. And as long as they're doing so in a way that doesn't upset, offend, horrify the rest of the players, that's fine. What that takes is for the player up front to say, you know, I really want to get into this character. And so if something happens and I start crying, don't feel the need to stop the game to comfort me. I'm okay. I know the safe word I will say if it ever gets too much. Again, communication. If you tell people up front, I really want to experience something through this gameplay, and I've played in TTRPGs, ran TTRPGs like that. I was not long ago running Masks of Nyarlathotep for Red Moon Roleplaying, and one of the players said, in advance, I want to go somewhere with this session. So if I start crying, just keep going. That kind of communication is gold, as far as I'm concerned, because it means they have given themselves permission to bleed, but there is still an open channel so that if they want it to stop, all they have to do is say, and it will. Because if you're role-playing with half-decent people, you're not going to be dragging them through a meat grinder and enjoying their sadness. But you can drag them through the meat grinder and enjoy their sadness if they tell you in advance, we want to feel sad. We want to be scared. We want to feel something. So bleed is a complicated topic, and everyone's experience with it is going to be slightly different. I would love to hear your stories of bleed and how bleed has affected you in RPGs, both to the positive and the negative, because it isn't always bad. But please let me know in the comments below, and if you want a video made, please back Monster Kingdoms at the deluxe version and contact me through MatthewDawkins.com. Be seeing you.